It is 1:15 a.m. in Willoughby Hills, Ohio. In a quiet, suburban home, the unthinkable is happening. A 13-year-old girl is watching her mother fight for her life against an attacker wielding a 10-inch serrated knife. But this is not a random act of violence. This is a nightmare born from inside the family, woven from sexual betrayal, manipulation, and a cold-blooded conspiracy to cash in on a life insurance policy. This is the true story of Lisa Knoefel, a woman who dedicated her life to saving broken children. And the two people she trusted most, the husband in her bed and the teenager she took into her home, who repaid her love with 178 stab wounds. To understand the horror of November 26, 2012, you first have to understand the warmth that lived inside Lisa Knoefel. Lisa was a 41-year-old social worker for Cuyahoga County. She didn't just work with troubled kids, she brought them home. She had a gift for seeing past juvenile records and behavioral issues to find the human being inside. By all accounts, Lisa was the anchor of her community. Her home in Willoughby Hills was modest, a 3-bedroom house where she lived with her husband, Kevin, their 13-year-old daughter, Megan, and a 3-year-old little girl. Lisa was a very heartwarming person. Everybody that knew her loved her. She had a big heart. She was always willing to help people who were in trouble. Not trouble they caused, but trouble they were born into.
In July of 2011, Lisa decided to open her home to a 16-year-old named Sabrina Zunich. Sabrina's early life had been marked by significant instability. Born to parents struggling with substance use, she was a survivor of abuse and had moved through the foster care system. She experienced emotional difficulties. She had a history of running away. But Lisa saw a young person she wanted to help. At first, it seemed like a good fit. Sabrina bonded with the younger girls. Lisa worked with her on her education. But tensions began to grow within the household. Kevin Knoefel, 42, was a truck driver. From the outside, he appeared quiet and steady. But within the family, inappropriate boundaries began to develop. What happened next is a well-documented pattern of manipulation. By early 2012, just months after Sabrina moved in, the relationship between the foster father and the teenager became abusive and illegal. Prosecutors would later present a disturbing account. Kevin didn't just exploit a minor, he used her past trauma against her. He told her he loved her. He convinced her that Lisa was the only obstacle to their being together. The situation quickly escalated into a criminal plan. Kevin, driving his truck on the Ohio Turnpike, hundreds of miles away, began suggesting violent actions against Lisa during phone calls.
Testimony later revealed that Kevin's primary motive wasn't just lust, it was greed. If Lisa died, Kevin stood to collect $750,000 to $800,000 in life insurance payouts and keep the family home. He presented this to Sabrina as their golden ticket. He told her he didn't want a divorce because he would lose custody of his 3-year-old daughter. The only clean solution was death. In the days leading up to the murder, Kevin allegedly gave Sabrina tactical advice. He told her exactly where to cut to make it fatal. He told her the carotid artery in the neck was the target. And then he gave her the alibi. On the night of November 25th, 2012, Kevin loaded his truck and started a long-haul drive to Michigan. He made sure he had receipts, witnesses, and a solid wall of distance between himself and the bloodshed. He left Sabrina alone in the house with Lisa and the 2 little girls to do his dirty work. The house on the cul-de-sac grew dark as the family went to sleep. Lisa Knoefel lay in her bed, unaware that the teenager she had tried to save was walking down the hallway toward her with a 10-inch bread knife.
It was just after 1 a.m. on November 26, 2012. Sabrina entered the master bedroom. Lisa woke up to the nightmare. What followed was not a quick, silent kill. It was a war. Lisa Knoefel was a social worker. She had counseled violent teens. She had de-escalated fights. But in the dark, against a girl wielding a serrated blade, her training turned into sheer survival instinct. Sabrina lunged, but Lisa fought back. According to forensic evidence presented at trial, Lisa didn't just lie there. She grabbed the blade. She kicked. She tried to push the girl off the bed. Medical examiner Dr. Joseph Philo would later testify to the brutality of the struggle. In the autopsy, he counted the wounds. But numbers don't capture the savagery. Dr. Joseph Philo said it was multiple stab and incised wounds. There were 12 distinct stab wounds and 166 cuts, total of 178 injuries. 178 times. The knife was bent from the force of hitting bone. Lisa sustained massive defensive wounds. Her left little finger and white thumb were nearly severed. She had tried to grab the knife to wrench it away. Her legs were slashed because she had crawled into a fetal position to protect her vital organs. One stab wound pierced her right eye, blinding her instantly. Another severed the carotid artery below her ear. In that moment, she was dead within minutes, even as her body kept fighting. In the middle of this bloody chaos, the bedroom door flew open. It was Megan, Lisa's 13-year-old daughter. She had heard her mother screaming. Megan watched as her foster sister plunged the knife into her mother again and again. With incredible presence of mind, Megan grabbed a phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher tried to keep the girl calm. In the background of that call, you can hear the grunts of the struggle. You can hear the wet, horrific sounds of the knife doing its work. While Megan was on the phone, she saw her 3-year-old little sister wander into the room. The toddler froze, witnessing the murder of her mother. Megan did the only thing she could. She grabbed the toddler, ran into the master walk-in closet, and hid. She locked the door and held her hand over the baby's mouth so Sabrina wouldn't find them. Willoughby Hills police responded in minutes. It was an active killer scenario. Sergeant Ron Parmenta said, "Officers entered. They saw the daughter, the 13-year-old, screaming at the front door, pointing down the hall. As they moved in, Sabrina came out of the bedroom. She had the 10-inch bread knife raised above her head. For a split second, the officers thought they were going to have to shoot her. She stood there, drenched in red, holding the weapon high. Sergeant Ron Parmenta said, "Our officer was sure he was going to have to use deadly force, but after a second or two, she dropped the knife. When they cleared the room, they found Lisa on the floor. The scene was described as one of the bloodiest in the department's history. There was spatter on the ceiling, on the walls. Sergeant Ron Parmenta said, it looked like a scene out of a horror movie. Sabrina was taken to the hospital for superficial wounds, likely cuts to her hands from the knife slipping in Lisa's blood. That's where the interrogation began. At first, Sabrina played dumb. She claimed she blacked out. She said she remembered taking ibuprofen and then waking up in the ambulance. But when Sergeant Parmenta told Sabrina that Lisa was dead and that she was the one who caused her death, her reaction was startling. Sergeant Parmenta later recalled, "She looked at me and said, 'I killed her?' Like she was asking for confirmation. Then she said, 'So the 13-year-old and the 3-year-old saw me?' Then she just said, 'Nobody needed to see that.' No tears, no visible shock. Just concern for how she appeared to others." But that composed reaction didn't last. Once authorities offered her a deal, testify against Kevin in exchange for the possibility of parole, Sabrina began to speak more openly. And the details she revealed were even more disturbing than investigators had imagined. Kevin Knoefel was arrested. During his trial, the prosecution laid out the roadmap of his manipulation. They showed that Kevin had been inappropriately involved with Sabrina because she was a minor in his care. They played the phone records. They showed that the day before the killing, Kevin had a breakdown. He allegedly told Sabrina, "If you don't do it, I am going to end my own life." He told the teenager that his wife was evil. He gave her specific instructions on how to carry out the act. Kevin's defense team argued that Sabrina was the primary instigator and acted alone. They pointed to the extreme number of wounds as evidence of a personal rage they claimed Kevin could not have planted.
They argued the foster daughter was fixated on him, not the other way around.
But the jury saw the text messages. They saw the insurance policies. And they listened to the testimony of the sole survivor of that night, Megan. Megan took the stand. She looked at the man who had raised her, her stepfather, and she told the court that the night of the murder, as her mother lay bleeding, Kevin had called the house. Instead of telling Megan to run to a neighbor, instead of screaming for her to save her mother, Kevin gave a bizarre instruction. Megan said, "He told me to go into the bedroom and see if the knife was still there. He told me to wipe it down. He told me to make it look like a burglary." A husband whose wife is being murdered doesn't worry about the murder weapon. A father doesn't instruct his 13-year-old daughter to tamper with evidence unless he has something to hide. In August 2014, Kevin Knoefel was found guilty of complicity to commit aggravated murder and sexual battery. The judge looked at the man who orchestrated the death of his wife and sentenced him to life in prison, with no chance of parole for 30 years.
And what of Sabrina Zunic? She pleaded guilty to aggravated murder. She avoided the death penalty or life without parole by agreeing to testify against Kevin. In September 2014, she stood before the court. She was 19. Her wrists were shackled. She turned to the family of the woman she had butchered and wept. Sabrina Zunic said, "I can't explain how much remorse I have, how much sadness. Lisa did not deserve what happened to her." But tears after the fact do not erase the act. The judge noted the gruesome nature of the crime. Sabrina Zunic was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. She will be nearly 50 years old before she ever sees a free sky again. The case of Lisa Knoefel sits in a dark place in true crime history because it defies easy explanation. It is a story about the failure of systems. A social worker who saved everyone except herself. A foster care system that placed a vulnerable teen into a home with a predator. A husband who decided that a life insurance payout was worth more than the mother of his children. But if there is a ghost in this story, it is the image of Lisa Knoefel in the dark. A woman who spent her career protecting kids, fighting for her own life against a child she tried to help. She lost that fight. But her daughter, Megan, that brave 13-year-old who hid in the closet with her little sister, survived. Megan grew up without her mother. She carries the trauma of that 911 call, of the sounds, of the blood. But she also carries the legacy of a woman who was a warrior. Lisa had her fingers nearly cut off because she refused to let go of the blade. She kicked and she screamed and she made sure that the killer didn't have an easy second. She taught us that even in the face of ultimate betrayal, some people never stop fighting. Kevin Knoefel remains in prison today, sitting in a cell paid for by the insurance money he never got to spend. Sabrina Zunic remains incarcerated, waiting for a parole board that may never forgive her. And in Willoughby Hills, the quiet suburban street eventually went back to sleep. But they say if you listen closely at 1:15 a.m., you can still hear the echo of a 13-year-old girl screaming for help and a mother who gave everything she had, right up until the very last second.